from my own experience in financial services, the first of those, targeting the highest potential customers, is difficult for all big businesses, especially for banks. A bank like HSBC, everybody's a potential customer. You've got millions of customers anyway, and I know from my own experience in financial services, there's an awful lot of pressures almost pushing you out to try to just grab as many customers as you possibly can. How do you guys approach the challenge of saying, you know, our opportunities are not equal with everybody. There are certain groups here that are very high potential for us or highly valuable to us. How do you go about segmenting the market, understanding who they are, and then targeting them in your marketing activity?
I think for us, it's not necessarily one of those things where we stick a screen over the world and sort of sieve it out to try and get the golden nuggets. I think for us, what we have is peculiar opportunities that present themselves. And so when we look at China, which I think is a fantastic example for us, for many years we had a joint venture with a big local bank to put credit cards into the market, Bank of Communications. It was a very successful joint venture. That came to its end about a year and a half ago. And we have an opportunity now to have a full HSBC credit card proposition in China. And therefore what we have is an opportunity to use some incredibly interesting kind of data that's available now to target customers in somewhere like China. So for those who spend their lives reading around some of the stuff that's going on the web, WeChat, which is an amazing platform that exists in China, for those who are uninitiated, go find out about it. It's an astonishing phenomenon. But actually the WeChat platform is our primary marketing vehicle that, because of the richness of its data, allows us to be quite selective and not necessarily just charge at everybody. And sometimes I think, you know, there's a responsibility in banks that we don't give vast amounts of credit to people who can't afford to pay it back, and we don't pursue everyone with the sort of same kind of vanilla proposition. And so what we've done in China is we've launched cards, propositions that have very specific kind of, you know, benefits that China customers want. So there's a sort of shop and dine kind of card, which is really around those who are very domestic minded. There's a sort of traveller card, which is much more for folks who obviously make their way out from, at the moment we're sort of very live in what's called the Pearl River Delta, which is the Shenzhen, Guangzhou kind of corridor. And so for us, you know, what we've found is the modern sort of world and the kind of new markets like China as they develop, giving us opportunities to use data that's available in a public domain, not our data, to actually target customers in the right kind of way, to even look at occasions when they've got more predisposition to hear from us, and be kind of, you know, mindful of the fact that we've then got to create a great customer experience that is very in keeping with how they run their lives.
So are you am I hearing from that then that part of the way that you do it is you're almost targeting by proposition. You're identifying there's a behaviour here, or a group of people who are behaving in this way. We'll develop a proposition for that behaviour, and we'll target that behaviour. That might not necessarily mean that those people are not, you know, have got other behaviours that we're not particularly targeting. But is that how you're doing it? Are you targeting behaviour rather than
it's a relatively blunt instrument in a place where there are billions of people. You know, there's 1.6 billion people in China, and it's a difficulty trying to use classical kind of, you know, you try and do your sort of, you know, behavioural kind of targeting, or you try and do your sort of, you know, classical kind of segmentations that you've had elsewhere. It's much more complicated, you know. It's sort of, well, it's just not possible. The world doesn't work that way. But if you look at WeChat, which can give you kind of data around customers who have, you know, spend a lot of time looking at different offers from retailers who you can tell from the WeChat platform, those who book restaurants through the WeChat, it gives you a kind of opportunity to say, why don't we develop a card that has incentives and the right kinds of, you know, sort of levers for the customer that represent the way they live their life, rather than you're 25 to 35 and you have a household income of X, Y, Z. No. Don't do any of that. Start looking at how people live rather than sort of what they are defined by.
So targeting, so that's interesting. So targeting by socio-demographics, simple socio-demographics, you would say, is not the right way to go. Too blunt an instrument. People are not like that. Rather, you're looking at how they live, people's lifestyles, and then trying to, I think I'm hearing, construct propositions that appeal to a certain lifestyle or a certain behaviour. And
I think it's not necessarily, for us it's not the appeal piece. For us, what we try and do is look to be more useful